My name is Jim Heath, Heath. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I think a result of where I grew up, I've now come down with acute myeloid leukemia. The disease that I have is, at my age, really impossible to treat. And as the oncologist explained to me, what likely will kill me is an infection of some kind. And that seems to be the case because I've been admitted to the hospital now 6 times with sepsis. The point of this video is to discuss the Santa Susana Mountains and a facility there that I think has caused my disease. I've done a lot of YouTube videos as an amateur radio operator explaining how some things work and how to work with some things. This video has nothing to do with that. It has to do with acute myeloid leukemia. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago with myeloid dysplastic syndrome, which has sometimes been called pre-leukemia, because about a third of the patients who have MDS develop AML. Myeloid dysplastic syndrome becomes acute myeloid leukemia. The times in the hospital last year were serious. Sometimes I was in guarded condition. A couple of times taken by ambulance. And that was what happened a few days ago. I had fallen asleep and was pretty shaky when I fell asleep. Normally, I'm pretty steady with my hands. I woke up shaking all over. I knew with that kind of shaking that I was likely spiking a fever. Took my temperature, and it was about 102 degrees. We called 911. I was fortunate enough to have an ambulance close by, and a fire truck showed up out in front of the house with firemen ready to deliver care and to get me to the hospital, and that did happen. I was admitted into the emergency department at Kaiser and taken to an isolation room because I have very low white count. Anybody who's around me has to be wearing a mask. Otherwise, that person could infect me, and the infection could be fatal. Tests run recently at the hospital show some heart damage, and likely that's a result of the stresses and the infections that I've had, and the lack of oxygen to my heart, to my brain, and to other muscles. The amount of oxygen in my blood can drop into the 70s if I'm relaxed and just laying down, chilling out, watching TV. It tends to want to drop because I don't have very many red blood cells. My red blood count is about 2. My white count is about 1. My ANC is 0.3 for those who understand things. Hemoglobin right now is probably about 7.2. As a result of tests being run while I was in the hospital and other times during, I go to the hospital twice a week for blood tests. I've had 20 transfusions since last year. The acute myeloid leukemia is part of a series of things that are affecting me. Another one is severe osteoporosis. Another one is a goiter. And I'd like to talk about the goiter a little bit first, and when I got it, and why I think I got it. Grew up in the San Fernando Valley. Um, there was a nuclear reactor in the Santa Susana Mountains on a 2,900 acre site. It's also the site where Saturn rockets were tested. And there is a connection. The nuclear reactor blew up, releasing more radioactivity than 3 Mile Island. I'll say that again. The nuclear reactor released more radiation into the atmosphere than 3 Mile Island. A lot of that is on the site. As a kid, the rockets were tested. The exhaust from the rockets were really pointed into the San Fernando Valley. We could hear them, we could feel them. What it was doing was blowing all kinds of chemicals, unburned fuel, into the San Fernando Valley, sometimes also picking up the radiation. The radioactivity was released in 1959. And at that time, shortly thereafter, I developed a goiter. The thyroid gland in my neck swelled up, the glands swelled up, and became hard, and they still are. I can still feel them. I was eventually taken to UCLA Medical Center, where they tried to figure out why a 10-year-old kid would have a disease related to a thyroid gland becoming enlarged, likely by radiation. Where did I get that? We didn't know. Today we know. I also think that the acute myeloid leukemia that I have is a result of the exposure to the fuels that were in the rockets and being blown into the San Fernando Valley. That site currently is owned by Boeing. I think at the time it was a joint ownership, and I think one of them was Rocketdyne. Most people don't know about it, about the Santa Susana Mountains and the damage that was done to people in the San Fernando Valley. It's been reported, I should say, by some of the TV stations in LA, like Channel 4 and Warren Only. But nothing really has happened to fix the situation, and it may be too late to do anything about it. My situation is grim. I know that, and it's become a little bit more difficult every day. Again, I'm having trouble keeping oxygen in my blood. As a result, I just sometimes pass out. It looks like I'm falling asleep, but actually I'm just down and out. I've had that happen during video conversations with others, to the point where one group decided they didn't want me in the group anymore, because a couple of times I did that, where I just went head down, and they're in all parts of the world, and they're panicked about what they can do to help me. The illness that I have, I firmly believe, is a result of exposure to benzene and other fuels that were pumped into the San Fernando Valley from Rocketdyne. And also the radiation that was released, I believe, is still on the ground in the San Fernando Valley. I believe the tests should be run. A lot of the San Fernando Valley has been developed that at the time was undeveloped. So it's hard to say how much has been covered up and is maybe encapsulated. I don't know. I know a little bit about amateur radio and electronics. I don't know much about radiation. At UCLA, when I was taken there in 1959 at the age of 10, the treatment was to, first of all, measure the radiation. You measure the goiter using radiation, and then ultimately to do an ablation. How am I doing now? I'm doing okay, not really strong, just out of the hospital a few days. It was not fun being in the hospital, and it wasn't fun to talk to the oncologist who came by my room to give me the news of the number of blasts in my blood. The way that was done was with a bone marrow aspiration. The final results of that are 4 weeks out, but the preliminary results are likely accurate according to the oncologist. So, to restate, I believe that the site north of the San Fernando Valley, the 2,900 acres, I believe is dangerous today. There was a fire that went through there a couple of years ago that likely put up plumes of radiation as stuff was being burned. It's an open sore north of the San Fernando Valley. It's a cancer, and that cancer, I think, is going to cause a lot of people grief. As I'm thinking back to the time I had the goiter, there were two kids who lived near me. They were just a few blocks up from where I lived. They were across the street from each other. Both of them developed a cancer at the time. It may have been leukemia. They both died about a year later, and within weeks of each other, they were both dead. Again, we didn't know about the Santa Susana Mountain issue. We just knew that it was bizarre that these two kids would have the same kind of cancer, and where did they get it? How were they exposed? What were they into? How did that happen? Well, today I know the answer, and it's the site that's owned by Boeing. Along those lines, it's unconscionable to me that a company could own a site that is dangerous, that they know is dangerous, and not fix it. And also for the state of California and the federal government not to fix the site. If the company that owns the site won't fix it, then the Fed should step in and fix it. If you would like to make a contribution to my Patreon account, I've put a link to that in the description of the video. The description is brief. Hopefully it'll catch some attention. And maybe finally something will be done with that site. Again, my name is Jim Heath. I currently live in Rockland, California, and I have acute myeloid leukemia, and it is terminal.